Okay, we should be set.
All right, very good. Thank you, Summer. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who are on YouTube, I just went into the chambers to just announce to the folks that are in person that because of the high transmission rate of COVID-19 here in Grand County, we have decided to conduct this meeting virtually. We can't hold our citizens to be heard virtually, however, because the city ordinances does not allow that. In the past, when we've done that because the state allowed us to do an emergency declaration during a pandemic. We're not allowed to do that anymore. So this is the format that we're gonna conduct this meeting tonight. Hopefully we won't do this again. Our transmission rate will go down. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and call the Moab City Council meeting to order on Tuesday, June 28th at 6:05 p.m. And I am going to make a roll call vote so everybody knows who's in attendance to this meeting. So I'll start with you, Tawny.
Not sure how do you want us to do that? Just say that we're attending?
Yeah, just announce yourself.
Tawny Knutson Boyd, Moab City Council.
Kaylin.
Kaylin Jones, Moab City Council.
Luke.
Luke Wojciechowski, Moab City Council.
Ronnie.
Ronnie Dressry, Moab City Council.
Jason.
Jason Taylor, Moab City Council.
Great. Oops. Thank you. We'll get the feedback situation taken care of, but we've got all 5 council members in attendance at this meeting. Jason is actually in the council chambers. Ben Billingsley is in the council chambers. Summer Johnson is in the chambers. Carly is in her office, and I am here in my office as well. So first item on the agenda is our citizens to be heard. And since Jason's in the council chambers with you all, he's going to go ahead and conduct the citizens to be heard portion of the meeting. So I'm going to just turn this over to Jason at this time. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now on Zoom?
Yep, we can.
Okay. And there's no feedback. Good. Okay, so we'll go into the citizens to be heard. We'll limit comments to 3 minutes. And Ben will be the timer guy, and we'll kind of go from there. First, Teresa King.
I have to touch it. While I'm talking. Sorry.
Make sure you can see yourself in the camera.
Oh, really? Okay. And hold the space bar down. Ready?
Yep.
Hello. Right on. Okay, my name is Teresa King. I am here tonight to extend a consent to one of the items on the consent agenda, even though you don't need my consent. But I want to say thank you to the Honorable Mayor for putting the letter together to the County Council in their commission in regards to the Moab Information Center. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce when that project was starting and being talked about. And I think it's a very, very important piece of the economy of Moab. And I'm so happy that she's paying attention to that. Secondly, I'm here as a publisher of the Moab Happenings. Moab Happenings wouldn't exist if there weren't happenings. So I'm very involved with all the special events in town, little or a lot. And I want to just say, I was kind of surprised by the situation with Scots on the Rocks. I hope that the city and the special event organizers can come to some agreements about whatever the situations are and continue to have the many events that we have. I will say, when I went to that event last year, I was pleasantly surprised as to how many locals were involved with that event, from volunteers to sponsors to clan with the C clan people that were there in costume. It took a minute to recognize them. I'm a professional event goer only in Moab, and I just wanted to point that out. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's not my room.
I'm tired.
Mary Irwin?
Okay, so you said hold the space bar down?
It looks like it's already unmuted, so you should be okay.
Oh, okay, fine. Well, I'm just here to speak in support of the Scots on the Rocks Festival being held in town at the baseball fields again, because it seems like we were able to get a lot more folks just walking in because they would hear the music and come out to see what was going on. These kinds of events are important to the heritage of a lot of us. So denying it just because some people don't like that kind of music is like when I hear other people complain about the hippie music that they hear blaring from the park at certain points in time. So if we want to be a diverse community, we have to consider those of us of European heritage as well as everybody else when we're trying to keep these events open and kind of present perspectives from all over town. So I would just encourage your support for this event once again to take place at the ball fields in town, so that we're a little more protected from the wind. The vendors don't lose their tents and the clans don't lose their tents when the wind hits. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Cricket Green. I am longtime local and I live straight up the street. And it has been brought to my attention that some of the people said it was way too loud. I'm only 2 blocks away. It's not that loud. And in fact, I enjoy it when I do hear it. I get to hear the music festival. And I would like to see like the diversity. This is something completely different. And a lot of people walk in and see it. Plus, you know, there's a lot of people in this town that the parents are working one or the other and they don't have a vehicle and they can walk. They're in town. This is an event that's very family friendly that families can go to. So I'm just completely for this. And I think that like the tents, as she was saying, is really bad out in the valley. If you ever lived out there, which once I did, the wind is outrageous. You never know when it's coming and it's pretty bad. Here in town, it's kind of surrounded and they don't have that problem. But more importantly, it's really a community event. I go a lot and I see a lot of the locals that I see all the time. And it's something that for the locals to enjoy. So I really would hope that you guys would rethink this and not let a couple people stop this from happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Final list.
Hi, my name is Michael Liss, and I live at 349 East Center Street. I live just down the street. So I hear everything that's going on in the park from my living room, from my bedroom. I hear the kids laughing when they're playing sports. I hear them shouting when they get a home run. Last week, everybody was screaming because it started to rain in the afternoon and everyone was having fun, okay? So this is about hearing the life of a city, okay? It's one of the benefits of living in a city. You guys have to remember, you're not a wilderness council. You're not a village council. You're not even a town council. You're a city council. This is the city of Moab, okay? This is a place, cities were created because people wanted to come together and share culture and intellectual thoughts and ideas and share music and sports and dance, and where gay people would feel accepted, where Jewish people would feel accepted, okay? I mean, and so Dan and Marta, who I met this evening, they spend thousands of hours preparing for this event and working on it. They should be given a certificate of merit from the city of Moab for creating a wonderful event. So kids grow up not just hearing what's on the radio, but hearing bagpipes and this kind of music and that kind of music. That's why we live in a city, folks. Remember that. This is a really special thing that we've created here in the middle of the wilderness, a really special thing. And we shouldn't forget it. And we want to create a diverse, welcoming community with all types of culture where our kids can grow up and learn about everything without even leaving their town. So I really hope you'll reconsider this. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Joseph?
We good? Excellent. My name is Joseph Chisholm Lima. I am a Moab resident, born and raised, and owner of Moab Rocks Community Radio. I am here today asking you to reconsider issuing the permit to the Scots on the Rocks Festival to be held at the Moab City Ball Fields. My middle name is Chisholm. It comes from my Scottish heritage. I have gathered over 1,639 petition signatures from supporters of this fantastic cultural event, with over 600 signatures from Moab and surrounding communities. I have also personally reached out to supporters from outside of Moab and have found that many of them travel to our area to participate in the Scots on the Rocks Festival. This is such a wonderfully diverse, cultural, family-oriented event. To not allow it to be held in the center of town is truly disheartening. This event is just that. It's about culture, education, family, and celebrating heritage and community, much like other events in Moab. It saddens me to hear that people complained about bagpipes playing. Bagpipes are used in so many different cultures. Here in America, bagpipes are played to honor our fallen heroes, from firefighters, police officers, to military personnel. I've attended services in which bagpipes were played to honor a fellow service member of who I served with. The sounds of this festival are in no way louder than any other festival or event held in Moab. As a schooled sound engineer, knowing how sound dissipates over space, I can assure you that it is within the allowed levels of the Moab city limits, which is 92 decibels from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. It's not possible for this festival to exceed over 80 decibels from any front yard from a home across the city ball fields. Diversity is what we're looking for in events in Moab. The Scots on the Rocks Festival is as diverse as the Day of the Dead Festival held at the Moab Multicultural Center. This festival welcomes our entire community to educate, share different culture and their heritage with our community. I enjoy both of these festivals as I am Scottish, Hispanic, and Italian. Let's keep our events diverse and inclusive to all and find a middle ground for all of us, our community, city council members, and the festival organizers to work together and to continue this tradition of the Scots on the Rocks Festival. I now would like to submit our petition to be entered into record, along with 96 comments from our petition supporters. Our petition was created on change.org. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
On the record. Thank you.
Dan and Marta Lamont.
Camera shot.
We're good. Good evening, everybody. We are the organizers of this event.
Lot of help.
We have tons of people that come and help. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And the whole thing behind this, we brought it here 9 years ago.
This will be our 9th year.
This will be our 9th year, is to bring more people together of the Celtic heritage, culture, And so other people can see what we have. We want to bring it into the city as we did last year, so more locals, like was already said, that they can't get there because they don't have any way to get there, but they can walk. Bring their families and come and enjoy Scottish Highland dancing, heavy athletics, the bagpipes, and all the wares of all the vendors that come. Now, understand that these games are not a local thing. These games are put on because the athletics, the Highland dancing, the bagpipes and drumming, it's competition. These guys compete for world records. And they go from festival to festival to compete. They get points, they get awards, they get ribbons, but all their numbers go to the big house over in Scotland. And so it's not just a, let's go to Moab and party down. It's not like that at all. We want our people to see what the Celtic world is all about. And there's no better way, no better place that we were told. When we first started this, everybody said, Moab has the best venue, the best, because you're talking Salt Lake City, you're talking Grant Junction, you're talking Payson, Utah. They're all beautiful, but we have the best venue to come down and bring people down and to enjoy what we enjoy down here. We love it here. We've been here a long time too. And that's why we started it.
We really enjoyed being able to be here at the park last year. I think it brought more people in. A lot of locals, as Brooke had mentioned, they can't get out to the arena, or they're busy working their 3 jobs and they just have an hour, which takes time to get out there and back, where they could go here in town easier. And we had more attendance this year than in this last time than any previous year. So we're very pleased with the venue. We got a lot of positive feedback of the people that were here to help us with that.
And we've made changes so we could try to accommodate everybody's wish. We have made changes, and I think the changes will work out perfect. Maybe if we had more time the first year, we would have already done this. But now we have done it, and we hope that it'll suffice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I also just want to tell everybody who did submit comments via the website that we did get those. And we've all seen those.
Jason, just for the record, there were 16 comment forms that came in, and there were numerous emails that were sent to the city council for and against. So, the ones that came in on the form will be posted on the website on the city council page.
Okay. You guys all got that? Okay. Anything else since we heard? We'll move on to presentation. Turn it back over to Joette.
Great. Thank you, Jason, for doing that. That's awesome. Thanks so much. So we will move on to presentations. Do we have somebody from the museum waiting? Yep. So we have 2 presentations tonight. One is from the Moab Museum, the Museum of Moab, I believe is what's officially called. And that'll be a 10-minute presentation to get us updated on what's been happening with the museum. And then we've got another presentation, the MRAC feasibility study. That will be a 20-30-minute presentation, and Annie and her consultants will join us for that. But first we'll start with the Museum of Moab.
Can you hold on for one moment?
Yep.
Okay, we're good to go now.
All right. Summer, will you bring in the museum folks?
I don't have anyone in the waiting room. Is that Marcus? I think Marcus is for Corey.
So we don't have anybody from the museum here tonight yet that we know of?
Not yet.
Okay. Let us, Tani, have you heard from anybody from the museum?
I haven't, but let me call Tara and see what's up. Give me just a minute.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next presentation that we have with Annie and her team. And that's a presentation of the MRAC feasibility study. So is Annie out there?
She's popping on. Hold tight.
All right. Hey, Annie.
Hi, how are you? And Marcus is with our presentation if he's in the waiting room.
Oh, perfect.
Marcus, can you hear us?
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
All right, good evening. So last fall, the city contracted with Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham to provide a financial feasibility study for the MRAC. In that process, they looked at participation rates, fee schedules, revenue structure, operational costs, future capital improvement needs, among other data points. And tonight they're going to provide a highlight of that study. The overall goal of this effort is to really understand what our operational costs are, what our future capital improvement needs are, and how differing fee levels will impact our bottom line. So depending on the discussion and the direction tonight, staff anticipates coming back to council with an increase to the current fee schedule. So I'd like to introduce Marcus Lee with LYRB, who has been great to work with over the past few months.
Awesome. Let me just share my screen real quick.
So Annie, this is just for the MRAC, the fee schedule amendments. Okay.
Yeah, just for the MRAC.
Okay, my screen should be sharing. Let me know if you run into any problems. But my name is Marcus. I've been working with Annie to kind of understand some trends with the rec center. So we just wanted to give some high level information on what we've been able to parse out. Just real quick, we'll go through our financial plan and objectives, our methodology, how we kind of conducted the study, and eventually roll around to our recommendations for the MRAC usage fees. One of the main, well, we had two main issues we wanted to look at, revenue sufficiency. So what would be the impact of a no rate hike or a proposed rate hike over a 10-year planning horizon? And what would that do to the unrestricted fund balance? We also wanted to consider the feasibility of a rate hike and the equity of such a rate hike. We wanted to keep things accessible to visitors and residents alike. And then again, just that impact over the 10-year planning horizon. We just used MRAC provided data to determine trends in revenue growth and expenditures, so operation maintenance, salaries, wages, benefits, capital improvement projects, and that. And then the final, I guess, teaser recommendation is to maybe consider more frequent rate hikes, but smaller rate hikes. So it's not a large sum every 5 or 7 years, however often they've been done, in line with keeping things accessible and manageable for residents and visitors alike. Again, here's just a quick rundown of what we'll run through the rest of the presentation. So when we first started the study, we looked at admissions data, membership data from residents and non-residents. And from that, we created our baseline projection. So here we have our 10-year fund balance if there is no rate hike, but we consider a 3% annual inflation in wages, growth, expenditures, and things of that nature. The bottom line is by 2032, in 10 years, the unrestricted fund balance will have a balance of negative 6.9 million if no adjustment is made to the usage fees of the rec center. A large portion of any entity's expenses, as we know, is operations and maintenance, so upkeep of the pool, gym equipment, and then employee wages. But the other consideration we have is capital expenditures. There's about, in 2022 dollars, about 1.8 million of capital projects identified over the 10 years that contribute greatly to this decline in the fund balance. Here we have a different visualization of the data. We have our annual revenues and expenditures. We see that expenditures outpace revenues, accumulating in a 5.4 million deficit over the 10-year horizon. Here is a condensed version of the model I've been working with on Annie, where we see kind of those hard numbers. The MRAC has a targeted goal to maintain a 20% balance of the annual operating revenue in the fund balance, but that's not possible with the current fee structure. We see that by year 10, the fund balance will ultimately be negative 347% of its stated goal. But again, that's due to just the cost of operating the rec center and the identified capital improvements over the 10-year planning horizon. Now, that established our baseline. So now we started looking into proposed scenarios. So what we have calculated is a 10% rate increase, hypothetically, for admissions, memberships, etc. This accumulates in a fund balance in 2032, or at the end of the 10-year planning horizon, of about negative 6.01 million. So the rec center would generate about $719,000 more of revenue over the 10 years with the proposed rate hike. And later in the presentation, we'll have specific data of what the exact dollar increase is, but it's very manageable for residents and non-residents alike. And again, we see that there is an uptick in revenues, but it's not quite enough to be in the black for every year over the next 10 years. But it is a little better than the baseline scenario of negative 6.9 million. And again, we have this hard data. So rather than negative 347%, we're up to negative 292%. So it is a considerable increase in the fund balance, but it still doesn't quite meet the goals. Just to reiterate, capital improvements were kept constant throughout the model. And we can see in 2025, there are some large outlays with capital improvements. Here are those specific capital improvements. We grew these at 3% inflation as well, since some projects will happen later in the 10-year planning horizon. Large outlays are in 23, 24, 2027, and 2030. And these are necessary projects required to keep the pool running, to renew leases on the gym equipment that residents and visitors use. And so these capital improvements are considered necessary to the continued operation of the rec center. And then we also tried to project attendance with a 10% rate increase. So we used admissions data from the rec center, and the specific methodology is we used a growth rate from 2015 to 2019. We excluded 2020 due to the COVID pandemic and the closures of a lot of public facilities. And we excluded 2021 due to impartial data at the time the study was begun. So we wanted to get a relatively recent trend and use that going forward. For residents, they are charged less than non-residents to get into the rec center. And the largest growth rates calculated were for the family category. So we predict a relatively large increase in families using the rec center. There is a slight decline in the youth, so those age 14 to 17, of -3%. But the largest growth would come from the non-residents. We realize that Moab is a very tourist-driven town, and especially in the summer, that's where you see a lot of your attendance and revenues being generated from visitors. So we have a very large growth in the non-resident youth and families. And since they're charged a slightly higher fee for admittance, that's where a lot of the new growth in revenues will be generated over the planning timeline. And then the same admissions data was used. So we excluded 2020 and 2021 to account for the COVID pandemic. So here is where we see some of the proposed rates if a 10% increase were to be implemented. Sorry, my light just turned off. So a 10% for the resident daily single use, so either entrance into the rec center, or sorry, the pool side or the fitness side, so the gym, etc. That would go maximum for a $1.50 increase for a family. For a resident adult, we're looking at a 50-cent increase. For non-residents, it's slightly higher, but it's the highest increase will be $3 for a non-resident family. The kind of conclusion we came to is a 10% increase would be reasonable. We don't want to price people out. We don't want to make the rec center inaccessible for residents or visitors. So we're trying to balance the need of new revenue to sustain operations with periodic updates to the fee schedule. Again, just reiterating, one of the larger increases in the deficit other than operation and maintenance are these capital projects. So 33% of the unrestricted fund balance by 2032 is due to these capital projects, about 2.01 million when accounted for inflation. Other recommendations, we want to continue evaluating the rec center's working capital and capital improvement projects over time, maybe see if there's other financial methods that can generate that revenue needed, whether it be through grants or other programs. And then we would also evaluate the membership options and daily admission structures. Due to the rec center's unique clientele with a lot of visitors and tourists, there's quite complex fee structure with quarterly memberships, monthly memberships, annual memberships with the resident versus non-resident rate. So further study could be used to see if we can capture some of that revenue leakage based on the fee structure. And then again, we would want to consider more frequent but smaller rate hikes, so we're not shocking any residents or visitors with a large fee increase, but over a larger period of time. Now, another hypothetical situation Annie and I worked on is what is necessary to make the rec center operate in the black for every year without going into a negative fund balance. And that answer is when we remove capital improvement projects, fees would need to increase 63%, a one-time fee increase of 63% with 3% annual inflation to never operate in a deficit over the next 10 years. And here we see the eventual balance of the fund will be a positive amount. This graph is incorrect on my bad, but the positive revenue would be around $2 million when accounting for removing capital improvements, that 2.01 million. The 63% fee increase is a lot more steep, so it would be probably unpopular, but we see a family of 6 would see the daily usage fee increase from $15 to $24.50. And for non-residents, it would go for $30 to almost $49. So it is a considerable increase, but this is just a hypothetical to showcase what the actual need would be. Here we have the hard data again. We'll end up with about 1.3 million in the unrestricted fund balance. But again, this is hypothetical, but it would make sure the rec center is net revenue positive and self-sustaining. So the city wouldn't have to transfer any out of its general fund to cover any deficits. And then we just wanted to do a quick comparison of other rec centers with around the state versus what the rec center charges now. So we see that the Moab Rec Center has a little room to increase fees, but there's also a very large subsidy from other rec centers throughout the state. They're heavily subsidized by either the county or the cities that they reside in. So it's not a unique thing for the Moab Rec Center to operate at a deficit, but they are a public service. So the final conclusion was just to, once the council maybe digests information or has other questions we can answer at a later time, is to implement these changes for the rec center, the 10% fee increase. So Annie, if you had any other comments, that concludes the presentation. Or if you have questions, you can send them to Annie and I can work with her to answer your individual questions.
Annie, any comments?
No,
Questions?
so my comments are really just to hear some general feedback or questions from council, kind of on this information, more information they'd want to hear. There's a lot of data in the report and in the model, but we want to kind of give an overview of understanding what it would take if we wanted to actually operate net neutral, and then what a modest increase might look like.
Great. Marcus, if you could remove your shared screen, that would be awesome. Questions for Annie? I can't see everybody. Now I can. Questions for Annie on this proposed fee increase. We will be taking action on this at another time, but now's an opportunity to get some give some feedback to Annie and Marcus. Anybody? Kaylin.
So I admit that I didn't review all the information that was presented in the packet, but was a possible contribution from the RAP tax included in any of the future models?
Let me.
We did not.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so RAP tax was not considered, and the recreation service district from the county, that was held constant through the model. So we just weren't sure how their budgeting would look with their revenue streams.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kaylin. Any other council members? Questions? All right, that wraps up that presentation. We'll hear more about this in the future. Annie, any idea when you want to, are we going to adopt this fee schedule individually, or is this going to be something that's going to be a package deal with all our fees?
It'll probably be individually. We've done most of the fee increases or the fee schedule increases for the year, so it'll be individual.
Okay, very good, great. All right, thank you guys. Thanks, Marcus. Annie, we'll see you a little later. Summer, anybody from the museum?
No.
Okay,
Yeah, I think there was a miscommunication somewhere because they didn't realize they were on the agenda. So we can do that at another time.
okay. Thanks, Tony, for reaching out. We'll just reschedule it another time. We're
Yeah.
very interested to hear what's going on with the museum. They've been doing some cool stuff. So next time we'll make sure that they're aware that they're up.
Yeah, well, we had our last meeting on the same night they had theirs, so I haven't learned to clone myself yet.
Thanks, Tony. All right, moving on. It looks like Nathan has joined us. We don't need you yet, Nathan, but welcome to the group. Next on the agenda, we have department updates, but we have no department updates. So just so you know, the reason this is on the agenda is a couple weeks ago when we had that fire out in the, I can see myself behind you. That's really uncomfortable to look and see myself behind Justin's head. Anyway, we had an event at the Public Works meeting a couple weeks ago, and it dawned on me, we really had no avenue on our agenda for Levi to come and make a report. So I decided to put department updates on the agenda as a placeholder in the event that happens. And of course, you know, we'd always love to hear from our department heads, and they can coordinate that with Carly and Ben. But tonight we have no department heads reports, but this will continue to be on the agenda for the foreseeable future in case that we do. Next up is consent agenda. We have 3 items on this agenda. Can everybody hear me? The wind is kind of blowing. I have my window open. I don't know if that's distracting or not. Okay. Consent agenda, letter to the Grand County Commission in support of CNHA's use of the MIC. And you all saw that letter. The county, it was looking at potentially selling that facility in order to provide some money for them to do some upgrades at the courthouse. And so I felt, and I talked to you all about it, that maybe that's not the best use of money. That's a very important element of our community. We have 2 sets of minutes. One is an emergency meeting scheduled on June 10th, and another, and that was regarding the bird property and an easement that was due to expire. We needed to get that taken care of. And then we also had a special meeting on June 15th. The other item for consent is the approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $562,852.12. Do we have any questions on the consent agenda, Ronnie?
I was just wondering if we could split up the minutes. Since I wasn't here for those meetings, I was thinking I should abstain from that vote, but I can vote on the other one.
Sure. Do you want to, which one do you want to pull off? Like you're muted.
Sorry, the minutes, because I wasn't here for those. So if you want, I can make a motion to approve the consent agenda with, the letter to the Grand County Commission and approval of the bills. And
that's fine. We can put the minutes on the next, well, how do we do that? Because if it's not a consent.
It's a separate motion.
Okay, so we'll,
after somebody motions to approve.
okay, got you. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So on the consent agenda, we have 2 items. We have a motion made by Ronnie to approve the letters of the Grand County Commission and the approval of the bills. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Kaylin. Any discussion, Ronnie? Kaylin? All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Ronnie?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Luke?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Jason? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Next item, we move the approval of the minutes. If I could have a motion to approve the minutes from June 10th and June 15th.
I'll move to approve the minutes from June 10th and June 15th.
Motion by Tawny, second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Luke. Any discussion, Tawny? Luke? Anybody else? All right, Tawny, how do you vote?
Aye.
Luke?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Ronnie?
I'll abstain, having been absent.
Great. Thank you, Ronnie. We have approval of the 2 minutes, June 10th, June 15th, by motion of 4-0 with one Ronnie abstaining. All righty, moving right along, we've got a public hearing on proposed resolution 2022, a resolution amending the FY 2022 budget. So I'm going to open the public hearing. We're going to keep this public hearing open through new business, and then we'll take action at the end of our new business on 7.3, agenda item 7.3. So Ben, do you want to just give a brief update on what the amendments were?
Absolutely. I thought it'd be a little easier if I just switched over to this screen to introduce this budget amendment. So as you council members know that have been around for a little bit, it's fairly common practice to do a budget amendment. Normal is December and June. As part of the fiscal year, we actually had one special budget amendment in February. And partly for that reason, this is a very simple budget amendment. We captured a lot of those items in February that maybe would have been pushed back until June. But what this budget does, it does not increase any budgeted expenditures for the fiscal year in any fund. All it's doing is proposing to transfer $2 million of unrestricted fund balance from the general fund and allocate that to the capital projects fund. As outlined in the agenda packet, our fund balance at fiscal year end 2021 was $2.8 million, and following some extremely conservative revenue budgeting and expenditure budgeting, along with the spending freeze that was still in place for the first quarter of fiscal year 22. This resulted in an abnormally large fund balance contribution for fiscal year 22, totaling approximately $4.2 million. This results in a fund balance that actually exceeds our allowable limit by approximately $1.2 million. And as such, as part of the fiscal year 2023 planning, we anticipated this and knew that we would be using some contributed general fund dollars to the capital projects fund. And so what this does, this $2 million transfer sets the stage for the fiscal year 2023 capital funds budget. So that said, I will go ahead and I guess we're in a public hearing, so move on to that section.
Great. Before we open up to the public, any questions for Ben from the council? All right. Jason, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak to this? Looks like not.
I don't think so.
All right, very good. We'll keep this open in case anybody shows up that wants to talk to this item. Next, we'll move on to new business. And Ben, you left the podium too soon because now you're up to talk about the fiscal year 2022 fraud risk assessment.
Guys, I think we have like a capacity of about 10 or 15 minutes of finance related items in any given city council meeting, and we've already hit that threshold. So we have 3 total agenda items that are finance related. I apologize. So the fraud risk assessment is an annual requirement by the state auditor's office. It was implemented in 2018, and we complete this annually. And our score actually didn't change from the prior fiscal year. We didn't make any major policy changes that would have increased or decreased our score. But we still met as a finance team, so accounts payable, accounts receivable. So Marcy and Summer and I, we met and we reviewed our internal controls, all of our mitigating controls, and basically we went through each of these items one by one to make sure that our policy didn't need to be updated and that we're actually following that mitigating control policy. Our score as presented in the agenda packet it's a self-evaluated score of low risk, which is very good. There are 3 possible areas that would enable us to decrease our scored risk level from low to very low as defined by the state auditor's office. Those are a a professional certification process, implementing a fraud hotline, and implementing an audit committee. The one that we will definitely be doing this year is a fraud hotline, because that's a fairly simple, it's a low barrier to implement that. But other than that, the requirement by the state is that we submit this for the city council review on an annual basis. So no approval is required. It's just Carly and I sign off on it and we present it to the city council. Ronnie.
Just a quick question on the fraud hotline, Ben. I only asked this because of a special service district that I serve on the board of. So there we discussed, obviously a special service district doesn't have the capacity to create fraud hotline, but that it was acceptable for these points in our understanding to just link up with the fraud hotline at the state auditor's office. Is that your understanding?
Yep, you got that exactly right. So the reason that we didn't give ourselves the score for that this year is because we don't actually have that in policy yet. So in the next few months, I believe, Danny will be presenting a new employee, not a new, but a few updates to our employee policy handbook. And we will include that fraud hotline in that handbook, at which time we'll be able to count those points.
And you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining it, but just so we have some idea, what would be involved for the professional certification or the audit committee?
So the professional certification, that's like your finance director having a CPA license.
Yeah.
There's a few other options that can be done. From a personal perspective, I don't have the incentive to do that. So it would be done on organization time. And essentially that would be if Carly asked it of me. If I was, if the city council was interested in having that licensed professional. I'm actually halfway through one of the certifications. I kind of abandoned it a few years ago, but that's so it's not a significant amount of time, but again, this is all about perceived risk. And I'm not necessarily of the opinion that it would actually substantially decrease our risk by obtaining that. The audit committee, the county actually has an audit committee, Grand County. They hire that as part of they contract that out as part of their accounting services. It's not something that we've done. I think last year I said I wouldn't recommend it just because of the complexity and it's unnecessary. However, after, I learned a little bit more about it about a year ago, and it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. It's something that could pretty easily be done. It's a committee that would just simply meet annually to discuss our annual financial audit. Could be as few as a 3-person committee. It could be me, a council member, and maybe one other person, probably an external, financial expert, maybe someone from a local CPA firm. That's something that we could work on if the council desired, and they would primarily be heavily engaged in acquiring audit services, which, if you remember right, we did that last year. So we have a new audit firm that we'll probably be with for the next 3 to 5 years right now. So.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks. I know it's not all about maximizing your score, but that just helps put it in context. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else, Ronnie? No? Anybody else on the council? Questions for Ben? All right, thanks, Ben. Don't go anywhere. You've got the next item, 7.2, new business presentation of the fiscal year 22-23 budget book.
Okay, this is going to get really clunky because I'm going to go switch back over to my laptop because I have a few items there that I wanted to share.
Okay.
Okay, can everybody hear me there?
Mm-hmm.
A few nods. Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So the first thing that sorry, Mayor, did you introduce this, or am I just moving right into the next one?
I introduced it. No, you just moved to another place in the chambers.
Okay, so this I was muted. We're good on the budget book presentation. Is that what we're on?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. So the intent of I wanted to talk very briefly about what a narrative budget book is. it's fairly normal for cities of smaller cities to present their budget in a spreadsheet format. The state auditor's office even provides the spreadsheets where you can build a budget. You know, those are very small entities that are using that template. But up until this point, the document that I'm sharing right now is the document that has been presented to the City Council for the fiscal year 2023 budget. And, you know, the complexity of these documents is pretty enormous. We use a lot of spreadsheets to build this document up, and it ends up, you know, it's over 1,000 line items in total. And it's really difficult to understand the story of the budget by looking at these things. This year I included a materiality threshold and an explanation when that materiality threshold was exceeded. And the reason that I did that is just, you know, that's most entities don't even include that. This is just to kind of gain a better understanding of line by line what the budget represents. As a citizen of the city of Moab, it's very difficult to understand a spreadsheet version of a budget. If you didn't attend the strategic planning session, all the budget presentations that led up to the adoption of the final budget, and even have some of the backstory, some of the buildup, spreadsheet buildup, it's difficult to understand really what the budget is doing. So a budget book is really supposed to tell that story in a narrative and easy to read format. So that said, I'll now switch over to the budget here. So this is our digital budget book, and I wanted to touch very briefly. There is a printed version of this available. It ends up 199 pages long, and you end up losing a lot of the benefit that you gain of having a digital budget book because it's more difficult to navigate, but all the information is there with a table of contents. But again, in this version, in the printed version, you kind of have to read it more like a story if you don't know what you're looking for. You kind of just read it start to finish, and it's 200 pages long. So again, it's not a very user-friendly document. But when we go to the digital budget book, which I'll go to now, you can really zero in on the areas of the city that you're interested in seeing. So I would first start just by showing, you know, there's a few different tabs. This navigates very much like just a website. You have some headers there, and there's budget introduction, budget overview, fund summaries. You know, a lot of people aren't going to come to the budget book to learn about the history of Moab City or the demographics, but you may be interested in the organization chart. So what the departments of the city look like. We also have a basis of budgeting, some financial policies, and the budget process and what that looks like. So that's the introduction to the budget. I'm not going to go through each of these because that's something that citizens or the council can do on their own time. I just wanted to provide very brief overview. Like in the budget overview, one of the major things that is important to understand are the personnel changes. So as we add or remove positions, this is where you would find that. So here's a narrative version where we're just talking about the need for the various positions that have been proposed in the budget, as well as a total count of authorized positions. So this is for full-time equivalent positions. And as we mentioned throughout the budget process, we are proposing 6 new positions, 6 new full-time positions. However, if you scroll to the bottom of the organization-wide budgeted full-time equivalents, you'll see that it was actually only an increase of 2.8 positions because they're very, you know, throughout various departments, there's changes that are happening. This also covers cost of living adjustments, merit increases, health insurance benefits. And again, this is where you can really drill down to kind of the personnel side. You also have a page for each fund. And this
Ben,
is a very,
I think Kaylin has a question. I have a feeling it's because we're not really seeing what you're talking about.
Yes, if you're intending to screen share the pages from the budget book, we're still seeing an Excel doc.
Oh, I apologize. Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
I kept waiting for like a grand reveal, you know?
Ripping the sheet off.
Yeah.
Jason was looking at it, so he had that benefit. So this is the budget. This is the narrative version of the budget. And I think I can cut it short. I mean, you kind of see, you can click through this and you can read the narrative. Each fund explains the changes of that fund. There's department pages for each different department and the priorities that budget that we placed for that budget for that year. You know, the police department is something that we've been talking a lot about. So here you can see the organizational chart. And if you scroll to the very bottom, you can see significant financial changes and projects for the next fiscal year. Another one is capital improvements. This is a significant, this is a good summary of the projects that we plan to undertake in the enterprise funds for the next fiscal year. And finally, a consolidated place to view all of the city of Moab's outstanding debt. So the first thing that it covers is our legal debt margin for our general governmental categories, as well as the water, sewer, street lighting. So this is something we've talked about in the past, is how much allowable debt the city has. The city's only utilizing 16% of its general debt and 29% of the water, sewer, and street lighting debt margin. And here you can really, you know, if you're curious what type of bonds we have issued, this is a good place to see that. So it really consolidates a lot of the city's story as far as the fiscal policy is concerned. As part of this process, we will be submitting the budget for a Government Finance Officer's Distinguished Budget Award. It's something that basically they recognize those cities that go the extra mile to communicate the budget to its citizens. And just as a point of reference, about 25 other cities in the state of Utah achieve this annually. And so I'll be submitting this, and hopefully it's something that we receive. It's, you know, they go through the requirements, and if you met all the requirements, then you receive that award. So we'll be updating you on that at a future time. That said, that is the presentation of the digital budget book. Definitely open to any questions.
That's great, Ben. Is this going to be available on our website?
Yeah, the best way to navigate that is to go to moabcity.org/budget. And it'll be at the very top of that page. It's not, as you can see, it's not hosted on our website. It's on the service provider, who is ClearGov. And so, you know, their URL is a little bit difficult to navigate to, but if you go to our website /budget, then that's the best way to get to it.
So it'll take you directly to this book?
The top of the page has a link to this book. Yep.
Great, perfect. Great, thanks, Ben. Questions for Ben on the budget book? All right, Ronnie.
I don't really have a question, but it's exciting to have this. So thank you. I think we've looked forward to having something like this.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm excited to build upon it too. You know, this is the first year that we've done it, and the hurdle will be a little bit smaller next year, so we can even expand and make it a better product to our citizens next year. And it'll also be available a little bit earlier in the budget process too.
Yeah, nice job. Thanks, Ben. Anything else on the budget book for Ben? All right, we will move to new business item 7.3. This is the proposed resolution 2022, a resolution amending the fiscal year budget for 21-22. We are in a public hearing. Has anybody shown up, Jason, that wants to speak to this issue?
Everybody says we're good here.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:09. And so questions, motion to approve. I'll ask for a motion, then we can discuss if you need to. Kaylin.
I move to approve resolution 20-2022, amending the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget.
Thank you, Kaylin. Second?
I can second.
Second by Ronnie. Thank you. Any discussion, Kaylin?
Nope.
Ronnie? Luke? Tawny? Jason? All right, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor of Resolution 2022, a resolution amending the fiscal year 21-22 budget. Kaylin?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Luke?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Great. Motion passes 5-0. All right, Ben, thank you for all your work on all this. It's been very good. Very good job. All right, now moving on to old business. This is the reconsideration considering the matter of the special event permit for Scots on the Rocks. I just would like to briefly explain why we're reconsidering this. And we're reconsidering this mainly because the Scots on the Rocks, as you all are aware, they came before us with an application, a month or so ago. The council denied that application in a 3-2 vote. And we needed to be a little bit more specific about the denial. In the meantime, the Scots on the Rocks filed a reapplication with our events coordinators, and so we're here to reconsider. We have like a couple of steps to this. First, we need the council to vote to reconsider, to put this matter back on the table. Then we will have staff make a presentation. You can ask questions of staff, ask questions of the organizers. I believe they're in the room. And then we will make a motion to either approve with no changes, a motion to approve with modifications to their application, or a motion to deny. If we approve with modifications or deny, we need to come up with findings of facts and conclusions of law. And we have Nathan and Carly here to help us through that process because it is a little complicated. So those are our three options. And I'm going to go ahead and ask for a motion to reconsider the matter of the special event permit for Scots on the Rocks 2022.
I'll make a motion to reconsider the special event permit application for the 2022 Scots on the Rocks Festival.
All right, motion made by Jason. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Tawny.
Jason sounds like Skeletor in his castle.
Jason, any discussion, Jason, on the reconsideration? Tawny? No? Anybody else on the council?
I just had a quick clarifying question. I know that we're not technically following like Robert's Rules of Order, but from what I was reading about motions to reconsider is in certain, certain guides, it says that a motion to reconsider can only be moved by the majority, or like somebody who kind of, I don't want to say won, but so I don't know if it needs to be potentially moved by myself, Ronnie, or Kaylin to reconsider. I just want to make sure that we're getting everything right this time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Luke, for that question. And Nathan, I see you unmuted. Why don't you go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, so Robert's Rules of Order is not that's commonly used, but your rules of order and procedure are what govern. And paragraph 8 of those rules requires a motion, a second, and an affirmative vote of the majority, which is what just happened. And at the time of the reconsideration, the number of council members present must be equal to or greater to the number of council members present when the matter was first considered. So you were all present, if I recall, the first time. You're all present now. So the reconsideration requirements of your rules of order and procedure are satisfied.
Great, thanks, Luke. Any other discussion regarding this reconsideration motion? All right, I'll call for the vote. Jason?
Aye.
Tawny?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Luke?
Aye.
And Kaylin?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Motion to approve reconsideration passes 5-0. All right, I'm going to turn the time over now to Kelly. I don't know if Annie's here with you. If she's in the room, she can join. If not, fine. To talk about the reapplication process and to give you guys some more information about the original application, whatever questions you may have for her. Kelly?
Thank you. All right, so we're bringing up the event permit application for the Scots on the Rocks 2022 event. They're looking to use the Center Street ball fields again this year, and they have come to us with an updated application. So to kind of break down the timeline for you a little bit, they reapplied to have their event at the ballparks again for this year. The first time they've had it within the city limits was last year. It was 2021. And prior to that, it's been held at the old Spanish Trail Arena. And they had a couple of reasons for moving in town. Some of that was weather related, really high winds, and some things out there that they didn't quite like. And this was touched on a little bit earlier as well when they spoke, but part of the reason why they wanted to move in town as well was to get some of that foot traffic and for people to be able to get to the ball fields a little bit easier since it's closer to downtown than the Spanish Trail Arena. So they had it there last year and they really enjoyed it. So they applied to have it at the fields again. Staff received the application and were made aware of some complaints or concerns by some neighbors in the ball field area. So we let the organizers know about these complaints and let them have some time to address them and possibly update their application, kind of let council know what their event looks like in a little bit more detail, give a breakdown of how the day runs and what goes on. So they submitted some letters that addressed those concerns, talked a little bit about their competitions and how the events go, the nature of the competitions being not just a local thing, but a larger scale. So there's rules that govern them that are larger than just their event. And then on April 26th, it was brought to council. That's when the permit was originally denied. On May 1st, there was an appeal letter that was received. And then on May 12th, staff informed the organizers that the discussion would be reconsidered and arranged a time to meet with the organizers to go over those concerns. So some of the main concerns in that April 26th meeting were regarding the noise levels of the event. So that impact that it had on the surrounding neighborhoods. So staff met with the event organizers to kind of discuss some of those complaints and concerns and see what we could do, what kind of alterations to the event could be made. So Annie and I met with them and went over those major concerns to see what we could do. So the different suggestions that were made were, so the event is held at the parks and there's a dance competition, a pipe competition, and then there's also entertainment music. So we suggested a couple different things, one of them being moving the dance competition to either Star Hall or another location. The dance competition is accompanied by music as well. Another suggestion was to move the bagpipe and drum competitions so that that noise would not be at the ball field. So we suggested a couple different locations, Center Street Gym being across the street, Star Hall, the Mark, a little bit down the street, but still pretty close to the event, but having that sound kind of contained while it's still on the same day as the event. We suggested some limiting of the times. So the competition times, having those at a limited time of the day so that they would only be part of the day that they're impacting the neighborhood, or moving the concerts off-site so that they would be not sound throughout the entire day, but just a section, whether that's just the concert or just the competitions. And then also making sure to communicate to the competition and event participants that they need to stay in the event space rather than kind of moving throughout the neighborhood and being in the street space. So we gave them some of these points to consider and asked them to submit an updated application. We received that application on June 3rd, and some of the updates that were made to that application were they decided to move the dance competition to Star Hall, and then moving some of their other competitions to other areas in the field. So the pipe competition to the east side of the field, the pipe and the drum solo competition to the northeast side of the field. And there were some other adjustments made in regards to other complaints received last year. So there's no dogs allowed at the fields. An exception was made for last year for certain dogs to be allowed that went with the events. But this year, just eliminating that altogether, making sure that not just participants bringing dogs, but also people that were a part of the event not bringing dogs. They mark off parking for the library patrons, and then moving their entertainment stage to the northeast side of the field. So these were some of the changes that were made from their original application. And so that's where we are today with the updated application brought to you at this meeting.
Thank you, Kelly. Questions for Kelly from the council on the new application? Ronnie.
I have a bunch just because several things appear to have changed that we didn't just discuss, and some things conflict, so it's hard to tell what the actual intention is. So this is just to confirm what the correct information is. So in our agenda summary, it mentions hours from 8 to 8, but in the application, it says 8 to 6. So what are the proposed hours? Also in the application, it's unclear what the hours are at event location 1 on the 15th and 16th.
So I think that was a typo on my part, putting the 8 p.m. on the agenda summary. The application is 6 p.m.
Okay, and on the application, there are no hours listed for event location 1 for October 15th and 16th. What are those hours?
So the 15th and the 16th are the actual event. And so they're there throughout the entire day, setting up, making sure everybody's over there. But the events themselves, there's different things throughout the day with people, like each competition, there's not necessarily an end time for the competitions.
Okay, so normally we stipulate for each day of a special event permit a start time and an end time. So what I'm trying to explain is there's missing information on the application for 2 of the dates, for the 15th and 16th. You have the 15th noted for event location 2, which is presumably, I don't know if that's Star Hall, which is weird because that's a county facility, not us. But for event location 1, you have nothing listed for the 15th and 16th.
Oh, so I don't have that information. I don't know what the times would be at Star Hall.
No, I'm not talking about Star Hall. I don't know how else to explain this. Let me see if I can find the page in the application. If you go to the application submitted in June, I think it's page 1 or 2 of the application where you talk about event details and the dates and times. There's a place for the date and the start time and the end time.
Right, so for location 2 is Star Hall. Listed under event
I'm
name.
asking you about location 1. It only says October 13th and it only says October 14th. It doesn't say anything about the 15th and the 16th. So is it the same for all 3 days?
I'm under the impression that it's the same for all 3 days.
We've got, it looks like there's an event coordinator here that could answer those questions.
We have the event organizers here if you want clarification on that.
But Mayor, with all due respect, we as a council are being asked to deliberate on the paperwork in our packet. So the first question was about the paperwork in our packet in case there were any misunderstandings or missing information there that could be filled in.
Yeah, and it sounds like there is. And so if the event coordinator can fill in those questions, those that answer those questions for you, that'd be great.
Thank you. The dance competition that we were moving to Star Hall is only Saturday.
Yeah, I'm not asking about Star Hall. I'm asking about what the event hours are, the start time and the end time on the 15th and the 16th of October.
On the 15th, we will open the gates at 8 and be done at 6 p.m. And on that would be Saturday, and then Sunday, again, 8 till about 6 p.m.
So it's the same. Sounds like it's the same for all 3 days.
Friday, we're just going to be doing setup on Friday.
Okay.
So the event, we moved the evening concert to an outside venue. So we're not going to be having that at the ballpark. The evening, last year we did an evening concert from 6 to 9. And this year we've moved that offsite.
Okay.
So it will end at 6.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Ronnie?
That answers some of it. Just so you all know why this is confusing, the application we have says that the schedule will be the same as in 2021, and that's different than the material in our packet. So just to explain why I'm asking these questions. Likewise, on the parade in the April application, it said that there was a requested street closure. The June application says there was no requested street closure for the parade. So I was just wondering, is there a requested street closure or not? And if the street closure request was taken away for the parade, just why that was?
We would still like to do the parade. Did I check the wrong box when I filled this
The
out?
parade is noted, but the street closure parameter has changed. So I was wondering why it had changed or if that was an error.
Jason?
Okay. Well, it's, okay. So okay, so that would be, okay. So yes, we would, I'm sorry, I filled that out wrong, thinking that we were gonna close the whole road all the time is what I thought that meant. Like the street fair, but we're not. The street's not gonna be closed the whole time. It'll be
Okay,
just
but there is a
parade.
partial
Sorry.
closure requested for the period of the parade.
Yes, for about an hour.
Yeah, okay, cool. Let's see, moving right along. Kelly, I just wanted an update because I gotten some questions in the community about an update on alcohol. There was a time, obviously where we didn't allow any alcohol in the parks. And then in the past few years, we decided to start permitting it under certain circumstances at events. So we have had it at a lot of events. And when we started permitting it, there was a period where, you'd have your fenced in area for alcohol. And then I heard that stipulations, maybe having to do with liquor laws had changed. So do we still require a fenced in area for alcohol, or can people just use the whole area of the park?
So we have to follow all the DABC rules for that. So there does have to be a fenced in area. But since the ballparks are already fenced in and they have locking gates, the ballparks, that fencing counts as the fence. If you were to do something, for example, at Swanee, you have to put up additional fencing because the park itself is not fenced in.
Okay, because when this started, like for the half marathon, we'd have a fenced in area. You'd have to show ID to enter it. Minors couldn't enter that area, but it sounds like that's no longer the case. Like all the minors and the adults can hang out in the same place.
Right, they can be in the same spot. There has to be some form of ID check or wristband so that if you're all in the same spot, in the same beer garden, there's a differentiation between minors and those of legal drinking age.
Okay, and that's the same for hard and soft liquor, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then another question was, one of the questions that occurred last year was, aside from play during competition and official programs, so Friday through Sunday, there were also instruments being played and practice happening on Thursday and Monday. Is there anything in our updated application that makes any stipulations about whether we're allowing that or not?
We don't have anything in here about any sort of, noise for those setup and breakdown days. They should just be for setting up the fields and cleaning them up.
Okay, cool. And Also, just in reference to, I'm not really familiar, this might be an Annie question, with the facility rental agreement. Is it standard practice for us if we have a multi-day event to just say in our rental agreement that it's for one day?
So each location is different, and this one is the one specifically for the ballparks. It should include all the days that the event takes place.
Okay, I only ask because I'm not familiar with the agreement, but since we're being asked to read this stuff, item 1 on the first page of the agreement under term says that this is for one day, October 14th to 16th.
Through 16th. So that's another typo. My apologies on that one. It's just that the document is set up with one day on there, and the dates were changed, but the term wasn't.
And so should that be 3 days from the 14th to 16th, or should it actually be 5 days from for setup and cleanup for the 13th through the 17th?
It should include all of the days for setup and cleanup.
Okay, and the fee noted was for one day for $50. Should that be $50, or should it be $50 for multiple days?
So I'm not normally renting out the ball field, so I would have to double check with our recreation and parks team on that one.
Okay, yeah, if you could please check that, just because it seemed like the math was based on the number noted.
Yes, we send out invoices and double check everything.
I guess one of my initial questions, just for the organizers, based on the intro we were given, was given that staff did make the recommendation to move the pipe and drum bands and competitions to an alternate venue, an indoor venue, because that seemed like it's probably the loudest thing going on at the event. Just so we understand as a council and the public, was that just considered not possible or not desirable?
Mm-hmm. It was considered not possible. The bands will be in the parade as well, and each band will compete individually. There's pipers that compete solo, drum solos, and then the bands, different grades of each band will compete. And it wouldn't work inside a building.
Okay, and one of my other questions, I guess, about changes, and then I'll let colleagues ask questions too, was I'm a little bit confused because in the changes for the June application, it says that the pipe band competition is moving to the east side of the field, and the pipe and drum solo competition is moving to the northeast side. But the maps we were given in 2021 and April of 22, and actually June of 22 too, all showed bands occurring in the northeast corner of the park and athletics in the southeast corner. So it was already my impression that that was happening on the east side. So I don't really understand what's changing.
It will be the northeast section of the ballpark where the bands will compete.
Okay, I mean, that's the impression we've been given since 2021. So is that, are you saying that's not what happened in 2021?
That's what I thought was happening in 21, and I was mistaken. They told me when they got here that they would be in front of our stage on the southwest section. So we will move our stage to the northeast ball field.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I'll let someone else ask questions.
Thanks, Ronnie. Questions from council? Other questions from anybody? Okay, no questions for Kelly or the event organizers. I will ask for a motion. As I stated at the beginning, we have 3 options here. One is to approve as the application has been submitted. One is to approve and modify with specific reasons for the modifications, and then or to deny, and then the specific reasons, finding the facts why you deny. And again, we have staff here and Nathan here to help us through that process. And just so the public is aware, tonight we will be voting on one of those 3 motions, and staff will then refine the findings of facts and conclusions of law. And at our next meeting, we will ratify that decision. So tonight we will make a decision based on the staff's further refinement of that findings of facts. So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Jason?
I move to approve the 2022 Scots on the Rocks event permit application subject to findings of fact and conclusions of law prepared by staff to be ratified at our next meeting.
And just to be clear, we will need, with the findings of fact and conclusions of law, what we'll need to do is have the council go through the statute with us verbally and say, why are you approving it or why are you denying it? And so, Jason, now that you've made a motion, what I would suggest is that we go through the criteria in section 4.11.020. And I believe that was included in your packet, and go through why we're approving it or why you're proposing that we approve it.
So
And
Jason,
then we can take your verbal discussion and put that into a written document.
Jason, are you approving with any modifications or approving the application as submitted with the changes that they worked out with staff?
Hold on a second. Can you hear me? I'm approving it as submitted.
Okay. All right. So staff, Carly, do you want to assist with going through the ordinance?
Yeah, let me pull it up.
I'd like to request that there be a second first.
Oh, thank you, Kaylin. Do we have a second? Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Connie. All right, we have a motion made to approve the application as submitted. And we have a second by Connie. All right, Carly and Nathan?
One sec, I'm pulling that up. Summer, am I able to share my screen or is it just you in the chambers?
You should be able to share.
Okay, great. Let me pull it up. Nathan, will you remind me of the citation 03? Is it 03?
4.11.020.
Okay.
And so these are basically the grounds for denial.
That's right, not approval.
But, you know, if we're approving it, we're basically saying, all right, these grounds don't apply.
Let me share my screen right now. I guess I could have just pulled up the agenda. So here are the reasons why the council may issue a denial and maybe even a modification, because that, as we're going to go through it, the modifications might apply during an appeal procedure where I believe a special event applicant adversely affected by a permitting decision may appeal as provided in this section. So modifications or decisions you made might not be outright denials, but they may be adverse impacts or affect them adversely. So we want to account for that. I'll come back up here. And we have this now, but you know, maybe for the purpose of Jason's motion, this doesn't necessarily.
So, and just to be clear, these are the only reasons that we could deny it. And I think previously when the council voted to deny it, it was under number 2. My understanding is that none of these other factors are applicable here. For instance, I haven't heard that the police or the fire or the EMS or roads have indicated that this event will place an unreasonable burden on them. And so I think that the finding would be, hey, you know, they've come, and I don't want to speak for the council, but an example would be they've come back and they've addressed our concerns, and we believe that they've been reasonably mitigated under 4.11.020. Or conversely, if someone wants to make an alternative motion, they would need to explain why they believe that the council's current concerns have not been reasonably mitigated.
So Nathan and Carly, how should we proceed? We have a motion on the table. We have a second. So the finding of facts would be that the event will pose an unreasonable, or that we've met all these. If it was denied, the denial the last time was number 2. Where the motion is to approve, and so the approval basically is stipulating that all of these rules, so to speak, have been met.
Yes,
correct?
That would be the motion. The motion is we believe that the factors in 4.11.020 have been met, and I think considering that we denied it previously, we would need some discussion from the council members, including Jason, who's made the motion, and others who support it, as to why they believe that the adverse impacts have been reasonably mitigated.
Okay.
Like, what's different this time than before?
Right. Jason?
So, I don't know.
I think there was some feedback there for a minute. So, I know that this is a little complicated, so please recognize that we can talk this through. We can talk through this. Don't feel pressured. We can do this. That we want to do this the right way, and that's why we have Nathan here today.
Sorry. I have a couple of things. I guess it's initially potentially a suggestion to amend the motion to accept the application as submitted. It seems as though Ronnie has identified a couple of errors within the application itself that I believe need to be addressed. So I think we should, if we do want to approve this event moving forward, that we should include those modifications or corrections to the application within the motion itself. It does, going kind of to the changes that were made within the applications that have been made in an effort to address the decision that there were going to be unacceptable adverse impacts upon the community. It does look like the dance competition was moved to Star Hall to minimize some of the outside noise. It looks like the events are being moved to different parts of the field to kind of increase the distance from certain residences to minimize noise impact. Looks like the event is ending at 6 p.m. now instead of 8 p.m. as identified in the initial application. And I think and then addressing like the issue with the dogs on the park or on the field. And I think that's all that I was able to identify.
Great, thanks, Luke. So we have a motion and a second. It sounds like you're asking to amend the motion to update the application to reflect the changes that Ronnie pointed out, and that the number 2 has been mitigated based on what you just explained.
Yeah.
Well, number 2 is kind of moot because it's a new application. So doesn't it kind of just throw out everything that had to do with the first application?
No, it doesn't, because we labeled this a reconsideration, but I'll let the attorney speak to that. I confirmed that earlier.
Ronnie's correct. It's a reconsideration. I know they've submitted a new application, but you had previously voted down something else. And if we're approving it, we're basically going through and saying why none of these denial factors apply. So I think we need to explain why the concerns that were expressed before are now different this time around.
So
Can I amend my motion then? Does it need to be voted on first?
well, no, I think so Luke, are you requesting the amendment to Jason's motion?
Whatever is easiest. I think we can I'll vote to like deny Jason's and then like propose a new motion, or we can go with the amended motion, which I think sometimes gets a little complicated.
Staff, help me out here. It seems to me that if Jason approves the amendments proposed by Luke and Tawny approves the amendments proposed by Luke, that we can vote on the motion made with the amendments proposed by Luke.
So you're
You should
saying,
be able to, if Jason accepts a friendly amendment, and I do.
Yes.
yes, that would be probably the easiest way to do it.
So I would amend my motion to include the changes that Luke made with the motion.
All right. Okay, Tawny? Do you accept those amendments?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Summer.
Yes, Summer, were you able to catch all that? Are you feeling good about it?
You just jumped out the window.
So I have that the motion was amended to correct the errors in the application that were addressed by Ronnie, and that number 2 has been addressed.
Yeah, and then the reasons that Luke outlined, Jason adopted. Is that what we're?
Yes.
He was referencing
Yes.
his amended motion. Great. Nathan, you feel okay with that?
Yep.
All right. All right, we have a motion made by Jason with amendments, seconded by Tawny. I'm going to open it up for discussion. Jason?
I just think that looking at the reasons why we would deny it, they've made an attempt to mitigate those concerns that were in the first one. And there's been a lot of people who also live close to the park who said this wasn't an impact, So I think that, by these guys have made a good faith effort to fix, what the perceptions were of the reason why we denied it before it was denied. And I think that they need to be given a chance to make these changes and have the event.
Great. Tawny, discussion.
Can I get Carly to unshare her screen? Would that be possible? I can't see anybody.
There you go.
I would agree with what Jason said. I think they've made a good faith effort to mitigate this. We had a lot of people speak out in favor of this that also live close to these ballparks, and for a long time we've had people ask us for different kinds of events or events that weren't necessarily motorized, and this is the kind of event that people seem to be wanting, that's family friendly, that's walkable, that's accessible to locals and tourists alike. But I think it's loud or we don't like it is the very definition of what is the legal term, capricious and arbitrary. I can't square it in my head that we can have other musical events or other sporting events, but somehow this one falls out of that realm. So I'm very open to making sure that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in the application, and just moving forward.
Thanks, Tawny. Luke, discussion.
Yeah, I agree that it appears as though the applicants have made a good faith effort to address a lot of the concerns that have been identified. I am still concerned that a lot of the people who have vocalized concern about the impact that this event is going to have, and so really kind of in the context of the overall number of events that they're exposed to, this isn't really going to be too much solace for them because it's still going to be a disruption over that similar period of time. So I guess I would request for the event organizers potentially in the future to maybe try to identify some other areas within city limits that are a little bit further removed from residential areas, potentially some of the school properties or maybe like Old City Park or something like that, just so that we can find some sort of compromise where things are closer to the city, but the same group of people aren't exposed to the frequency of kind of noise impacts. I'd also be interested to hear if there's any sort of like locals discounts given. I know this is kind of identified as an event really for locals, and it'd be nice to see some sort of accommodation like that in the future as well. And then I'm also really looking forward to the city potentially looking to develop some sort of standards for events, or so that we can kind of get a better idea of the types of events, the frequency with which we would want these events within city limits to kind of better guide our decisions moving forward, so that we can avoid kind of situations and confusion like this in the future. But kind of going back to it, it does feel as though there has been a good faith effort made to address a lot of the concerns that have been identified. So I do want to give the event organizers credit for that and willingness to make accommodations on their end. So thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Kaylin, discussion.
So in reviewing the, it seems like what we're running into is the lack of specificity in our noise ordinance to balance the impacts of special events with the our neighborhoods and neighbors' desire for quiet. And I agree that living near a park, you're going to be subjected to more noise. But it seems like in trying to find balance, this particular event may have a little bit longer duration. And also our noise ordinance is specifically focused on amplified music. And in reviewing literature on bagpipes, turns out that they are quantitatively louder, although not in a way that the information that I could find, it was hard to figure out how to interpret it in the context of our noise ordinance. So I agree with Luke. I would really encourage staff to do what other cities have done, which is study their special events and develop some quantitative standards about what the what acceptable noise limits at private property boundaries could be, so that when this comes up in the future, we can fall back on that. Our special event, our noise ordinance provides exceptions for special events, and it says the prohibitions in this chapter do not apply to activities for which a special event or street performer permit has been issued pursuant to Title IV, if that permit has different hour or decibel limit restrictions. So I am still uncomfortable with the somewhat with the time limits on this event. I would be willing to, if it the exception to our noise ordinance was limited to October 15th and 16th, a maximum of 6 hours each day between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. to be determined by staff and the applicant. But I feel like right now, as it's formulated, there isn't that balance. I hear that there is an international competition element involved, but in my mind, that is not the primary value to our local attendees. They talk about the culture and the opportunity to connect with various things, but how out of area competitors don't really seem to contribute to the values that many people have expressed for what they get from this event. So I just feel like we could better balance the impacts on the neighborhood while allowing for some noise exceeding the typical standards. But I see that I'm probably in the minority, so unless someone else takes this up, probably don't need any modification to the motion.
So Kaylin, can you just kind of clarify? You said that the time frame, the amount of time that the noise was going, or that the event was being held, for the potential of having that noise from a continuing standpoint, that if it was reduced, it's the timing of those events that create the noise was reduced, that you would feel more comfortable with this event.
If we explicitly were allowing an exception to Moab Municipal Code Chapter 8.24, our noise ordinance, to October 15th and 16th, 6 hours maximum each day, sometime between the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Okay. Would you want to make a substitute motion to that effect?
Mayor, I have a clarifying question that I want
Sure.
to make sure.
Sure.
So
Go
Caitlin,
ahead.
you're proposing amendments to our regulations, is that correct?
No, I am proposing no, I'm just trying to work within the limitations of the code.
Okay, so you're proposing an amendment to our conditions of approval then?
Yes.
So one way to address that is, and this is how it would work, is for a substitute motion to be made. We'd have to vote on this original motion first, and I want to hear from Ronnie. But if you wanted to, Kaylin, you could make a substitute motion that includes what Luke incorporated in the original amended motion and what you just stipulated that you would be comfortable with. So what I will do, just to make it clear, is we'll move to Ronnie and get her input and her comments, and then we can call for the vote, see where that leads us, and then we can make another motion if we want to, if you're so inclined. Ronnie, discussion. Ronnie, do you have any discussion items that you?
Oops, sorry. Yes, I have a bit. Sorry, I'm just looking up one page so I can reference it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. I spent some time looking at this. I looked at letters that were received and some of the comments about how far noise was carrying, because while a lot of distasteful things have been said in the course of multiple meetings about this being us choosing one form of music over another, which I would challenge anyone to say that anyone on this council has made any comments like that. So what you might have read in community letters is one thing, but I think you're gonna have a hard time flinging that kind of stuff and having it stick to one of us. While a lot of accusations have been made in that regard, I do believe comments made over time had to do with questions about volume of noise and how far it was carrying. And so just like we've gotten complaints about the Red Rocks Arts Festival and how it was too loud last year because sound was carrying blocks and blocks, and it really did not need to be that loud. And I totally agree. And I don't think that event should happen again unless the sound is toned down. The beauty of something like that is you can turn the amplification on the stage down at the Red Rocks Arts Festival and make it quieter that way. It's harder with an instrument. And when you look at comments we were getting from people, you know, you can say the local residents are complaining, you know, if the sound is traveling a block or two, or you might even argue that's the case if it's 3 or 4 blocks. But we had individuals commenting that they could hear this as far as Mountain View, which I have looked at a map and drawn out a line as the crow flies. And if you go from the ball field to the address, which was referenced in letters, that's 0.75 miles, that's 4,100 feet. If you look at the length of a street block, let's just take one along the ballpark, that's 570 feet. So we're talking about sound being heard from an event, 7.19 blocks away from the event. Or we also had individuals say they could hear it from Portal Vista. So let's look at an address on River Sands Drive. And we can measure that from the ball field as being 1.17 miles, 6,170 feet, or the equivalent of 10.8 blocks. So my question for this body is, if we are holding an event with sound that's carrying that far, I am not a sound engineer, but I, given some time, could get some calculations from one about the decibel level that would be required to travel that far. And I think when we talk about differences in events that come before this council at this location, that's the difference we're looking at. First of all, I haven't gotten complaints about other events at the ball field, but secondly, certainly not people telling me, including people on the council, that the sound has traveled that far. So I think it's incumbent on the council to think about precedent. If you're saying you want to have events where the sound travels more than 10 blocks, please keep in mind, I do not think that was the intention. And I do think that is how, if you're going to ask how different musical events we've allowed are different, I'm going to argue that that is how it's different. We haven't had complaints about the others, and we certainly haven't been hearing that sound traveled 10 blocks. And so my argument would be that this is still inappropriate for the distance of the volume of noise traveling. And you can try and fling things at me saying I don't like bagpipes, but you're going to have a hard time making that stick, because I do like them. And a lot of people in this community have been at events with me where they were played. So that has nothing to do with it. Like I said, the Red Rock Art Festival, in my opinion, had some music similar to the Folk Festival. Folk Festival, didn't get complaints, not hearing it blocks away. Red Rock Arts Festival, way too loud, hearing it blocks and blocks away. So for what it's worth, my argument would be that this is still inappropriate. And another question that comes up when you're trying to talk about findings is, how else would this be different other than observations by multiple parties about sound traveling? And we also had comments about one of the reasons this location was desired is that the noise is heard down on Main Street and that can attract people. So I want you to think about whether you want to be promoting things with a noise level as the purpose of attracting people. Also, moving right along, sorry, I'm going to lose my thought point. One of the things that's happening here is, you know, you can have a musical event where you have one body playing music at a time. So you've got one stage, you've got one group playing, and I commend the organizers for trying to spread things out some. But because of the volume that comes from different instruments, if you have multiple instruments, like maybe at a regular stage performance, I don't know, maybe you have 5 musicians on the stage or something, they're playing together. But if you have multiple bands and teams warming up at the same time, and we know from our April 26th meeting that we're told, you know, this does need to happen all day because people need to warm up before they come on. You're having that consistently, but you're also having an amplified amount of decibels. It's not like you just have this one stage with 5 people. You've got clusters of different groups of people, and all of that is building upon itself. So I would argue that that is also a finding and a difference between what happens when you just have one stage in one group, when you have multiple ones spread out. And I would also argue, knowing that the sound is traveling as far as it is, this may not matter as much, but keep in mind there are residents around 3 sides of the ball field, because we got City Hall and the library on the other side. But then if you're, you know, potentially going or could go 10 blocks out, I think this body does hold responsibility, especially as one where a lot of people have answered questions in the community in interviews, but also in campaigns about noise and people's quality of life and all of those things. At some point, you kind of have to put your money at where your mouth is in terms of consistency, in terms of holding up to that commitment. I'll also point out that, you know, one of our nearby Celtic festivals of Mesa County, the Grand Valley Highland Games, holds theirs at the fairgrounds. And so I don't think it's wrong to hold an event like this at fairgrounds. I also have heard that the only wind-related accident that happened related to this event was last year when it was at the ball field, and I can get corroboration of that if you need it. But I do feel like this is a great event. We should all be celebrating each other's cultures, but our job as a body, when the staff passed this on to us for us to decide it instead of the staff, was to find findings, to do all the reading and the research, to be consistent. And I do feel like everything I'm saying is keeping in consistency with the code before us and what we're being asked to do. And I guess I will go ahead and leave it at that. But again, make no mistake, nobody here is saying that one person's culture is better than another's. Nothing like that is going on here. We're stuck in this crappy job of having to sit here and decide, is every venue appropriate for every event? And much as we may hate that job, and I can tell you I do hate this, I am forced to try to look at that. And I'm sure my colleagues are trying to look at it honestly based on their findings too. But just for me to sleep at night, I feel like I have to say all of that. And I do feel like I did try to do my due diligence findings and doing research and trying to explain why this is different and how it's different. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Ronnie. All right, I've heard from all council members. Any further discussion? And I will then call for the vote and we'll see where we end up with that. Any further discussion from council? Okay. Jason, how do you vote?
Aye.
Several ayes there. Connie?
Aye.
Kaylin?
No.
Luke?
Sorry, just to clarify, this is voting on the amended motion that
Yes.
I made those suggestions
Yes.
to,
Yes.
and not the one that, not the considerations that Kaylin was requesting.
Correct. Great.
Okay. I'm gonna go with aye.
Aye. Ronnie?
No.
Okay, motion passes. The event is approved with the conditions that we identified. We will ratify this motion once staff has the opportunity to write everything up. And we will ratify this at the next meeting. The motion passed 3-2 with Kaylin and Ronnie voting nay. Thank you, council. I know that was a tough conversation. I really appreciate all your thoughts. And I hope that the event organizers listened to, comments by Ronnie and Kaylin and understand there are impacts to the neighbors, and we'll develop some standards, I think, going forward to try to make sure that we have some really solid criteria to make these decisions in the future. So it's not such a difficult decision for you, council. So thank you again. All right, next item is old business number 8.2. I'm not going to read the whole item here on our agenda, but this has to do with the ordinance amending R3, R4 zones to include a requirement for active employee housing. The reason this is on the agenda is not for any action tonight. It's just to let the public know that we're working on this. We need to go into an executive session so that we can update you all on some of the negotiations where we are with this ordinance. We've met on several occasions with the Property Rights Coalition, the Utah Realtors Association, and most recently with the Home Builders Association. The conversations has been good. It's been an interesting process. We still have some things to work out. Nathan knows that you all are anxious to either decide on this or do whatever we need to do with this ordinance. Mainly, I just wanted the public to be aware that we haven't forgot about it. They're working very diligently to come to some kind of compromise. And I wanted to offer council opportunity to ask Corey any questions that you might have, not about the negotiation. We don't want to get into those details. We'll do that in executive session. But if you have any items that you would like to have Corey or Nathan address before we go into the executive session, now would be the time to do that. Questions, Ronnie?
I know I asked some things on the shared question document, but since the public doesn't have access to that, it might be nice if we answered one or two of those for the public so they know. I know a lot of people might have looked at the packet and said, oh, wait, it says 42.5% here. It says 33% here.
Oh.
Why is that? So that's
Yeah.
the first question.
Thanks for bringing that up, Ronnie. I meant to clarify that too, but Corey, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, that was one of the things I was hoping to address. What we're looking at here, again, within this ordinance was an item that was tabled by council. During that item that was tabled, that was the ordinance at the time of the 42.5. So for shorthand, we're going to basically discuss these in terms of percentage. That's a really easy identifying mark. So the item that was tabled at that 42.5 had been given direction to staff to discuss and negotiate and create amendments to that draft. So what's being shown within that agenda summary was the exact agenda summary that you had tabled. So that's being presented to be brought off the table. And then staff comments. So what you're seeing in the exhibits of the red line draft, which is another clarifying comment I'd like to make. And then the clean draft are the revisions to that original draft. So for all intents and purposes, the draft of discussion is the 33% draft. The reason the agenda was framed that way is because of the processing that we must go through to bring it back onto the table, because council hasn't made any official amendments yet. These are just staff recommendations.
Ronnie, go ahead.
I would first make a request in the future that we do get an updated agenda summary so people like me and the public don't get confused, because honestly, I thought the 33 was wrong and it was supposed to be 42.5. So it would be great to have an agenda that explains differences like that. But then also, can you explain, the red line didn't seem to have anything really redlined on it. And you explained to me in the shared document why that was, but maybe just for people who looked at the packet, you could explain that too.
Of course. And Carly, did you have a comment you want to make there?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So we're bringing back a tabled agenda item. So it hasn't been changed, the name of the ordinance, because the Planning Commission has passed it and you have tabled it. So it's sort of frozen in time. Right. And so we're bringing what are maybe some changes to discuss, but that changes hasn't actually been made to the ordinance. So that's why it says 42%, because that is the most current sort of official draft. The rest is like,
I mean, there's nothing for the lay person to understand, like
it can be
the percentage is still in question.
Yeah, we didn't want to give the impression that a decision had been made and a change had been made, because that's not the case. That would be a council decision, not a staff or PRC. So what we can do is try to clarify in agenda summaries rather than calling it something different. Just sort of saying that the discrepancy is what it is, because this is just a talking point. This is a discussion.
Right. That would be helpful.
Yeah, we have not, you guys have not made any changes to the ordinance that was presented to you back in March. Mm-hmm. And so that's why what you're seeing on your agenda is what you're seeing. This is what you guys tabled. We haven't decided on anything different than that. Ronnie, anything else?
Yeah, just Corey was going to clarify about the lack of red line.
Okay, thanks.
And to that particular note, because of the issue with the red line, I think that added to the confusion a little bit more, Ronnie. I think if the red line had been intact and whole, it might have made a lot more sense. So with the documents, when we had basically taken a Word document, which is how we produce those red line documents, and export it into a PDF format for uploading to the agenda formats, it auto accepted all of those changes. So the formatting was maybe even just a little bit off, and then some of those changes were even made. So the red line document, true red line document, was sent out to council. So you should have seen with the blue and red strike throughs underlined, all of the math, the hard work shown. And then that should be in the clean draft. A very clean version is correct and consistent. So I made sure to duplicate reading both of those side by side, and they were correct. That was just what had happened, kind of a technical issue when uploading the different systems.
Thanks, Corey. Ronnie, anything else? No? Any other council members' questions for Corey? Okay, more conversation here shortly. in executive session on that item. Now we move to Carly, city manager updates.
Oh, already. Okay, I have a few important updates, and I'll start off with just an announcement for the public and for you, council, too, in case you get questions. Our treasurer's office is experiencing some really limited capacity. We have our city treasurer doing the work of 4 full-time people. That will get better by next week. We have a staff member returning from parental leave. But in the meantime, you might be experiencing some delayed response times and those kinds of things. We also do hope to have a temp at my front desk again within the next couple weeks. So we really appreciate everyone's patience as we work through that. Some housekeeping, just to make you aware, we are proceeding with some design for Emma Boulevard. This is a project that was identified for our hotspot project funding projects. It's one that UDOT required that we contribute as part of the dispersed parking project. It'll be out to bid in July. So we're getting moving on that too, along with the rest of the dispersed parking that is being designed currently. Let me see, I can't read my own handwriting. Old City Park, there's an update. We got a lot of questions from concerned citizens who saw that Old City Park was looking a little dry over the last couple weeks. We had a pump fail, which draws irrigation water from the pond, and we took a couple weeks to get some parts and really to properly diagnose the problem, but the pump is up and running again, and we have some redundancy plan for that system. So a similar issue, if it goes down, we might have options to draw on the culinary water from Gwissa instead of simply relying on the irrigation system. This weekend, we are going to have Independence Day celebration, July 2nd at Swanee Park. I believe that's starting at 11 a.m. The Arts and Park staff have some really fun events planned. It's a free swim day at the MRAC. There's going to be a beer garden, games at the park, a lot of events. And then it will culminate Independence Day on community fireworks on July 4th. It's showcased from Lions Back. It starts at about dark. And that segues nicely into a reminder about fire danger here in town and responsibly using fireworks. As a reminder, we are at a very high risk for fire in Southeast Utah. We're under a stage 2 fire restriction at this point. It might get, we might enter more severe stages. There's no open burning within city limits, as you may recall. Personal fireworks are prohibited on parkways, public trails, and pedestrian paths in the city. All city parks except Center Street Ball Field. They are prohibited over or within 200 feet of Pack Creek or Mill Creek. Prohibited within 20 feet of any residence, building, structure, or combustible material. And Grand County and state and federal public lands, they have a fire ban, as a reminder. Fireworks are never allowed, ones that fly, explode, or travel more than 6 feet off the ground. Aerial and flash shells, Roman candles, comets and mortars, firecrackers, bottle and aerial rockets, and other similar explosives. Let's take it really seriously this year. We've had some really safe Independence Days, the times that I've been down here, and I'm really thankful to the community for taking it so seriously. If you have questions about those rules, we do have a flyer, and it is posted on the city website too, so you can reference that if you have questions about your fireworks behavior. And that's all I have for you.
Thanks, Carly. Next up is mayor and council reports. We'll start with council reports, and Jason, I'll start with you.
All right.
Sounds like there's an echo going on.
Yeah, they're trying to fix it.
There we go. Oh.
Okay. I only had one meeting this time, and it was the chamber, and the chamber is busy. They're busy getting ready for the 4th of July celebration on Saturday, and they've been rounding up volunteers and activities and all that. And probably the biggest thing that the chamber discussed is that May and June, a lot of the businesses in town have felt or feel like they're seeing a downturn in business. You know, definitely not as busy as last year, and some are seeing even a downturn from 2019. And so this was talked about quite a bit and what could be done about it and the concerns of the local business community. This has been everything from restaurants to hoteliers are kind of seeing the same trends, which a lot of it is probably economy, just high fuel prices and, you know, COVID rearing its ugly head again, and other things, other economic factors. So anyway, that was it. That's it. That's all I have.
All right, Jason, thank you. Ronnie, I know you've been out. Do you have anything you'd like to report?
Yeah, I was out June 6th to 20th due to deaths in the family. I just had a few things that happened between the last meeting and this one. I did attend, along with Kaylin, May 26th Zoom with the U.S. Forest Service regarding ongoing monitoring on the combined impacts of mountain goats, climate change, and recreation on alpine vegetation. That was very informative. I'm sure it sounded like they're willing to repeat that presentation for anyone interested. We had a GWISA meeting on June 2nd, and I did attend an EMS meeting, but I'm no longer the official rep. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Ronnie. Luke.
Yeah, it was a pretty sparse couple of weeks for me. I didn't have any committee meetings or anything like that. I did attend the Venus Smith event at Old City Park, which I felt went pretty well, and attended the free music concert last week, which was really great seeing the community turnout and kind of re-experience some of those community events again. I don't know if this is appropriate right now, but I realized I didn't really fully explain the justification for my vote on the Scots on the Rock situation. And although I agree that 8 a.m. is really early for this event, as far as I'm aware, we haven't made similar constraints on other events and everything like that. And we currently don't have anything in the code or any sort of guiding standards to make that distinction between this event. So I am concerned that we would kind of be venturing into the territory of arbitrary and capricious yet again. So I do hope that we can actually use this opportunity to take some of those measurements that Ronnie had been mentioning that can help guide the development of new standards, so that we have much more concrete and objective measures upon which we can help us make these decisions in the future. But that's all I have.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate that. Kaylin, I know you've been out as well.
I don't have any meetings to report on, but the Solid Waste Special Service District is currently advertising for a new executive director. And even though I haven't had formal board meetings, I am the chair of that board and have been in frequent contact with the administrative staff. They are well aware that they provide an essential service to the county and especially to the city as the franchisee for trash pickup. So they are very focused on maintaining continuity of service, and they take their responsibility very seriously. So they, and with the support from the board, will seek to make sure that despite the absence of one person in the C-suite, that services continue uninterrupted. So just want to provide that assurance. That's all.
Thanks, Kaylin. Tawny.
I don't have anything. We swapped our meeting last time, and so I missed museum meeting, but I've still been busy. I don't know what I've been doing, but I've been busy.
You've been working. Well, it's nice to have a little break, you guys. So I don't have a whole lot of report either, although I've been busy too. But I do have a couple things. But I am glad that, hopefully you guys got a little break. Ronnie, sorry about the deaths in your family. So I hope while you were out, you were able to at least enjoy your time away from the city council. Chuck and I met with the Nature Conservancy and the DWR, the Division of Wildlife, to talk about the outfall into the sloughs from the sewer treatment plant. And so that was a really good discussion. We have that project on our CIB list to replace the pipe from the treatment plant to the river. And that needs to take place before we can even start talking about outfall and the increase in treatment of the sewage in order to get that to a place where we can actively have it into the sloughs. So more to come on that, but that was a really good discussion. I'm glad I met with those guys. Was on KZMU last Monday to talk about the city's art program. That was really good, kind of timely because my message to the mayor article was about arts, parks, and recreation. So kind of blended very nicely together. Carly and Ben and I met with Curtis Wells, who just got confirmed by the Senate, the state Senate, to be the chair of the Community Impact Board. And the purpose of that was just to kind of discuss his new role and get him up to speed on what our projects are so he could help guide us and basically how we want to apply, what kind of grant versus loan, those kind of things. So it's a really nice opportunity and an advantage to have a local Grand County resident, Moab City resident as the chair of the Community Impact Board. He also had some questions about the process itself and how we can improve that process. And we agreed that we will coordinate a meeting with the chair of the county commission so that we can kind of talk about that process and see if we can make it much more meaningful so the priorities, you know, are clear. Right now, it's just kind of like everybody throws their projects in. It'd be nice to have it a little bit more organized and prioritized in a way so that it's a community-wide process, so that we're looking at projects that are going to affect the community as a whole. And that's all I have. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to go into an executive session. And we have to
And to be
state the
clear,
motion. Why,
The motion
yes,
would be for reasonably or reasonable or imminent, pending or reasonably imminent litigation.
correct. Ronnie,
I'll make a motion to enter executive session, a strategy session to discuss reasonably imminent and or pending litigation.
thanks, Ronnie. Second,
Second.
seconded by Kaylin. Any discussion, council? How do you vote, Ronnie?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Bonnie?
Aye.
Luke?
Aye.
All right, let's take a few minutes, take a little break. And